He is also slated immediately after the inauguration to immediately go back to the White House and start signing executive orders. That will either happen at the White House, it could happen at the Capitol. There was some talk that he might even do it at the arena in front of a crowd. Just bring the executive orders right in and sign them. It could be up to 200 executive orders signed by the President of the United States. Now, listen, as a constitutionalist, I got to tell you, I am not a huge fan of executive orders. I will say that we are now a government, unfortunately, run by executive order. Joe Biden ran the government by executive order. Donald Trump is going to have to reverse many of the worst actions of the Biden administration that were taken via the executive branch, ending around the legislative branch. This is a trend that really started under Barack Obama when he lost Congress and decided that he was going to use his pen and his phone in order to rule the country. So Trump, his first day in office in 2017, signed, I believe, one executive order. Today, he is slated to sign some 200 executive orders. And those executive orders are going to range from energy to DEI in the government. He released one of the executive orders yesterday to the Free Press, to my friend Barry Weiss's Free Press, setting out a government-wide standard on the biological reality of two sexes, clearly defining male and female, which, of course, that's such a dunk. It's such a dunk because the reality is that this is the single most polarizing and stupid issue that Democrats decided to choose during the last several election cycles. The idea that boys can become girls and that minor boys should be allowed to transition into minor girls. They should be given hormones and they should be given surgery. Like, all of that was such a bad sell for the Democrats that it all fell apart for them electorally. President Trump on day one is saying we are done with all of this. According to the Free Press, the executive order is to say that all radical gender ideology guidance, communication policies, and forms are removed from the federal government. Agencies will cease pretending that men can be women and women can be men when enforcing laws that protect against sex discrimination. I mean, that is very, very strong language there, the kind of language that is true and of which I strongly approve. I've been using precisely that language probably for a decade at this point, longer than a decade, actually. Woman means adult human female. The executive order directs the government identification, like passports and personnel records, will reflect biological reality and not self-assessed gender identity. They will be ending the practice of housing men in women's prisons and taxpayer-funded transition for male prisoners as well. The administration explained this really was a defining issue of the campaign. The president is going to be fulfilling the promises he made on the campaign trail. And it does not stop there. Day one, he's expected to include an order declaring an emergency at the U.S.-Mexico border. He's expected to issue pardons for some of the January 6th prisoners, some of the convicted. Those would presumably be, as J.D. Vance, vice president-elect, said, all of those who are participating in nonviolent activity, people who sort of trespassed in the Capitol building. He's also supposed to issue executive orders to increase fossil fuel development, which, of course, would be absolutely necessary. Now, all of these are directed at unleashing the economy. All of these are directed at rewriting the idiotic bargain that Joe Biden tried to foist on the United States. According to the Associated Press, President Trump has pledged to go further and move faster in enacting his agenda than during his first term. Democrats who once formed a resistance are now divided over whether to work with Trump or to defy him. So we're going to see a bevy of these rolled out. He's going to be labeling the drug cartels terrorist organizations. We'll get to more of what President Trump plans at the very beginning of his administration in just one moment. First, even if you think it's a bit overhyped, AI is suddenly everywhere, from self-driving cars to molecular medicine to business efficiency. If it's not in your industry yet, it is coming, and fast. But AI needs a lot of speed and computing power. So how do you compete without costs spiraling out of control? Time to upgrade to the next generation of the cloud, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI. OCI is a blazing fast and secure platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, plus all your AI and machine learning workloads. OCI costs 50% less for compute and 80% less for networking, so you are saving a pile of money. Thousands of businesses have already upgraded to OCI, including Vodafone, Thomson Reuters, and Suno AI. Right now, Oracle is offering to cut your current cloud bill in half if you move to OCI. For new U.S. customers with minimum financial commitment, offer ends March 31st. See if your company qualifies for this special offer at oracle.com/Shapiro. That's oracle.com/Shapiro. Once again, oracle.com/Shapiro. Go check them out right now. Offer ends March 31st. Oracle will cut your current cloud bill in half if you move on over to OCI for new U.S. customers with minimum financial commitment. According to Politico, the executive orders are going to cover everything from immigration to energy. According to Politico, Trump is eager to use week one to show his supporters he's making good on his signature issue of immigration. He's unlikely to fulfill some of the biggest and most aggressive day one promises, like large-scale deportation. We'll get to that in a moment. There will indeed be deportation efforts made this week. He is also expected to forge ahead with directing agencies to begin the process of restoring Remain in Mexico. That, of course, was one of the most important policies that was enacted during the Trump administration that says that if you show up at our border and you want to get in, you have to remain in Mexico while we process your application. Why is that important? Well, because the way that it had been working under Joe Biden, you came, you said the magic words, I'm claiming asylum from my home country because I am in fear for my life. They would immediately take you, process you, give you a date to come back to court and release you into the country where you would just disappear. Remain in Mexico means you wait on the other side of the border while we process your application instead of just being released into the interior. His team is still deliberating a designation of drug cartels as terrorist organizations. I think that is likely to happen. They're also thinking about crafting an executive order to end birthright citizenship by excluding the children of undocumented immigrants and short-term visitors to the U.S. from the right to citizenship by birth. Now, again, unclear whether that would stand up in court because that is usually interpreted as a constitutional issue that cannot be altered by something like an executive order. He is also going to be revoking the intelligence briefing capabilities, the intelligence access of the 51 ridiculous intelligence officials who suggested the Hunter Biden laptop story was Russian disinformation. On foreign policy, the president is saying that he's going to start negotiations between Ukraine and Russia day one. He is also sending some mixed signals about what's going to happen day one on tariff policy. I'd be surprised if there's no tariffs that come down via executive order today. Energy is going to be utterly unleashed by executive policy today. Trump may, in fact, declare a national emergency. Now, again, this is something that was a door opened by Democrats under Joe Biden when national emergencies were declared willy-nilly. So that cat has been let out of its crib at this point, and there's no way of putting that back in. President Trump is also thinking about a policy restricting foreign organizations receiving U.S. funding from providing and promoting abortion. That's the so-called Mexico City policy. That would be his sort of concession to pro-lifers. Of course, President Trump did not campaign as somebody who's going to do a lot on abortion policy as president of the United States, but this has reversed itself every administration. Republican comes in, puts back in place the Mexico City policy. Democrat comes in, obliterates it, and now we're performing abortions with American taxpayer dollars abroad. On education, you're going to see a bunch of executive orders ranging from matters of DEI to anti-Semitism to Title IX. On labor, the president is going to make it easier for his administration to fire or demote employees inside the executive branch via Schedule F plans. That's excellent. That's really good. You need to be able to fire people in the executive branch. They don't work for anyone but the president. These are independent branches of government. And when it comes to tech, President Trump is pledging to unleash tech. So, again, a lot going on in the the first day of the Trump administration. It's going to be huge. When it comes to immigration, Tom Homan, the immigration czar, the border watchdog, he says openly, the handcuffs are coming off day one.
We're going to take the handcuffs off ICE and let them go arrest criminal aliens. That's what's going to happen.
What has ICE been doing for the last 4 years?
They haven't been able to do much because Secretary Mayorkas had new ICE priorities that ICE, get this now, the Secretary of Homeland Security has told ICE, you can arrest an illegal alien if he's just here illegally. He's got to be convicted of a serious crime or be a national security threat. He told immigration officers not to enforce immigration law. Well, we're telling ICE, you're going to enforce immigration law without apology. You're going to concentrate on the worst first, public safety threats first, but no one's off the table. If they're in the country illegally, they got a problem.
Well, again, that is going to be the way that immigration is run. The incoming National Security Advisor, Mike Waltz, he says aggressive enforcement is on the table. I mean, this is what Trump was elected to do. If Trump has one mandate, this is the mandate. Close the border, stop the illegal immigration, and start deporting people who are illegally in the country. Here's Mike Waltz explaining.
You are certainly going to see a much more aggressive action from Border Patrol to lock down our border, number one. Number two, we are working rapidly back towards a Remain in Mexico policy. Number three, you're going to see some of our key partners step up in terms of deportation and taking some of these people back. I don't want to get too far ahead of who they are or how that's going to occur. And then number four, Tom Homan actually absolutely is going to take much more aggressive ICE action.
Now, unbelievably enough, the deep state is already trying to do things. When I say the deep state, I mean career staffers who are clearly trying to thwart President Trump's agenda here. The Washington Post reports that there had been big-scale deportation raids that were scheduled for Chicago day of the inauguration. And now it turns out that they haven't made a decision. Why? Because it got leaked to the press. So it turns out that when you leak to the press what the ICE raids are going to look like, people can avoid the ICE raids. According to Tom Homan, quote, we're looking at this leak. We will make a decision based on this leak. It's unfortunate because anyone leaking law enforcement operations puts officers at greater risk, which, of course, is absolutely true. And this is going to be a battle until they start firing people. They need to fire many, many people. Many people need to be fired. And when it comes to immigration itself, I got to say, as y'all know, not a particular fan of this particular Pope. I liked John Paul II. I like Pope Benedict. I do not like Pope Francis. I think Pope Francis has done a poor job of representing the eternal values of the Catholic Church. I speak as an outsider, obviously not as an insider. But Pope Francis came out and condemned President Trump's plan to impose mass deportations on the country. He said it would be a disgrace. To which I say, well, then probably you should take down the wall around Vatican City and see how that goes for you. Because you don't get to dictate American national border policy from the Vatican. That's an absurdity on its face.
Are you tired of the lies and the twist of the mainstream media talking points? Yeah, me too. Join me in my newest series, Fact, where I dismantle and bring truth to this tiring mainstream agenda.